Welcome to Subscription Prescription, the podcast where you get the information you need to scale your subscription program. All right, welcome to Subscription Armageddon. This is a special edition of Subscription Prescription where I am joined by my peers, also competitors, I guess you could say, right? We're all helping service subscription brands in the space, but I would consider all of them to be good friends and wonderful people. I am joined by Bryan Starck, the founder of 100 Degrees Celsius, Jordan Narduchi, the founder of DTCPG, and Rudnik, the founder of Good Subscription Agency. Guys, how are you? It's good to be here again.
It's great to be here too, Matt.
Yeah, I'm pumped for this conversation.
Squad together.
Yeah. This all started with
I'm excited to nerd out.
Conversation at This all started with a conversation at ChargeX, right? Jordan was like, "Hey, we should do a podcast," and I was like, "Jordan, how dare you take over my podcast?" But actually, that conversation was like one of my favorite things from the event, and we got a lot of views. But at the same time, I don't really care. I just like talking strategy with you guys because I feel like there's at least one or two things from that conversation I started doing in my own practice. So
Same.
I also have a request that the next time we do this, in person again.
Yeah, we definitely.
Yeah.
We'll have to get you guys out to Salt Lake. We'll have to do some stuff for either a Catalyst or something like that. It's not too far of a drive for Brian, and
I know it's so much easier for me this time around.
Everything is a 3-plane ordeal for me, so that's my punishment. But the price is
riding a caribou and like snowshoes and stuff.
Yeah,
but yeah, we'll get you down there.
Yeah. Coming down from Yukon, it's an ordeal. I'll tell you about one cool story about how an NHL hockey team once had to make. It was like a 3-month trip for them in the 1800s, but that's a side note.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you go.
We'll leave it at that. It was like dog teams, and they had to wait for the river to freeze over, and then they had to basically, because at the time anybody could challenge champion, basically the Stanley Cup champion, and this team was worthy enough to challenge them, and then they had to do a 3-month ordeal about anyway.
Can you imagine in the world we're living today, where we're vibe coding apps left and right, and you have to wait 3 months for a game to happen?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So here's the premise, everybody, that I want to start with. Subscription Armageddon. We're burning all the subscription apps to the ground. The four of us, we're going to go vibe code something that's just going to crush everything. I'm saying that tongue in cheek because I don't think you could vibe code something as complex as. However, what are the stuff that we would start with? What are the features that you guys are seeing that is working? Like, at least everybody think of at least one thing you are just loving as a feature set for what it's enabling right now that our new app would have to have in.
Yeah. Who wants to kick off?
I'm happy to kick off.
Do it.
I'm curious.
I know what you're going to say, I think.
You guys already know what I'm going to say. I'm like such the adoption buy guy, but yeah, I think the buy box, I think there's been a lot of innovation in the last year in this space. I think it's still early days. I think all of us still engage designers and developers to make those better. So I think just maybe different templates, more functionality. I think there's been some really cool innovations recently, but I still think there's a lot of room for improvement there. And things like buy more, save more integrated within it, or I should say subscribe more, save more. It's really what I call it now. That'd be where I would start.
Right.
Just to play off of Jordan's point, there's a cool idea that I actually just started thinking about, and we'll be testing with a brand, especially for brands that are hesitant about opting subscribers into default subscriptions. And that's making neither option selected, but making the option required. So before you add to cart, you have to pick one or the other. So nerding out, this comes from the book Hooked it's really basically how to build habit forming products. And they talk about ethics of building kind of unconscious automation products. And the big thing they talk about is choice architecture, which is letting the end user decide what the best choice is according to them. So just kind of removing all bias and just leaving the buy box unselected, but making that add to cart basically a required require choice before you add to cart. I think that could be it's definitely something we'll be testing soon with one of the brands who's like, oh, our subscription experience is a bit subpar yet still. That's why we're working on all the retention stuff. But to get them sped up on the acquisition side, because that's basically where a lot of the growth is going to happen. It's like, hey, we're gonna test this out. So yeah, I'm excited. I think that would be a cool one.
I definitely want to hear how that goes. The one thing I would keep an eye on is conversion rate, right? Because the counter to that is fewer clicks to get to conversion, right? Is the name of the game. And so it'll be really interesting to see not just how that shapes the opt-in, but also the overall conversion.
Agreed.
Yeah. But don't you think there was a little counterintuitive though with subscriptions sometimes, because there's often more choices? Like I think I was looking at Groon's product page yesterday where it was like you pick like sugar-free or sugar, you pick a flavor, you pick one or two people, and then they pick the delivery frequency.
Quarterly.
Yeah. And so so there's so many well, yeah, but at the same time, we're all assuming that they know what they're doing over there, right? Like, I like to think that everybody knows what they're doing, even though we know that's not always the case. But with subscriptions, it's often like so many choices because there's like future purchases involved. So I do wonder sometimes if like maybe making somebody click something wouldn't be a bad deal, as long as it's not you have to click like 10 things.
Well, you got to remember that most people don't have the Groon's acquisition strategy yet, though, right? Like, Groon's, in my opinion, is leading the charge. I think right now they're like one of the few brands that's really innovating on the subscription multiplication offer, which is like, how do you introduce multiplication factors to subscription? 1 versus 2 person, monthly versus quarterly, all these different ways to calibrate and increase AOV on subs. But most brands are still kind of like monthly, like just subscribe and save.
Have you seen their post-purchase offer, Bryan? Like what they do if you buy, like the upsell into quarterly.
Mm-hmm. I think that's really, really smart. When you look at the LTV and the payback comparisons on those kinds of post-purchase upsell offers, it's just bananas. But no, I think it's cool. I've seen a couple brands do that, like unselected. You have to choose. And I think it speaks to the fact, Andre, like you probably would agree that maximizing subscription take rate while increasing it is your biggest growth lever for increasing subscription growth. It's not always the right thing to do for long-term growth potential to max it as high as you can.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a sweet spot and it's lower than you might expect.
No, I would say it's always the case. There's never maximizing, because you can give 100% off, right? To get almost complete opt-in, right? But like you're going to get 4x, increase in your churn the following month. So there definitely is a sweet spot, and it's different for every brand, I would say.
Yeah.
Well, I think like early on in my subscription consulting career, like we have eliminated the one-time purchase option for a brand, and conversions just cratered. So the subscription, they were acquiring more subscribers, but the conversions just went off a cliff and it wasn't feasible for the brand. So like, yes, even if you're subscription first, you're pushing for that. If you don't have the right options set up, and you have to test for this, because some brands can work without the one-time offer, right? Like conversions suffer, you're not converting enough, you're dumping money, and you can't afford to wait 3 months to recoup some of those payments. So it does make sense. It's never going to be about maximizing. Bryan.
Yep.
What's your feature for subscription Armageddon?
Oof. Okay.
And I'm asking you that so I can think more about it myself.
Yeah. I'm trying to decide between two.
Let's get both of them. Let's hear both of them.
Okay, so both. This is not you could also say the same thing if there is, but the two that come to mind that are like my biggest gripes with subscription apps are analytics. I still don't feel like anybody has cracked that.
Right.
And there is the main limiting factor and roadblock for brands to adopt their features or invest more heavily in subscriptions or actually know what to do to reduce churn and all that stuff is hidden in their analytics. Mm-hmm. The subscription apps just don't tell them that. And they don't break down churn. They don't break down acquisition. They don't break down overtime metrics the way that they need to actually give people actionable insights, right? So it's like people like us, we have to go in, export CSVs of all of the subscription lines, do a bunch of different custom analysis, put together different pivot tables on stuff. That's like, and then it's static, but if these subscription apps could really, like, whoever comes in and cracks like the most badass analytics suite that is very, very actionable for brands, I think is going to have the most massive leg up on everybody.
I would love to see like an IntelliGems and subscription app had a baby where you could see every action or feature you enable to turn on, every quick link you test or whatever, you can see revenue impact like right away.
Right. Or baked in test and hold out functionality into the platform.
Yes.
Things like what's your viewed portal to cancel rate within 1 day or 3 days, or what's your cancel rate within 3 days of renewal one over time? How is that changing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or like what's your your days until churn? What specific days do you have big spikes of cancellations? Like there's so many different charts that actually just tell a great story. Like, oh, focus here, or oh, this product is way higher churn than this one. This specific billing cadence has way worse cancellation, higher cancellation, blah blah blah. Right? Like, so there's a ton of that. The second thing is just feeling like there's so much missed opportunity in the portal and the cancel flow to personalize things based on where subscribers are in their journey. Yeah. So for example, it's not very easy to create a super targeted cancel flow for people that it's the same day of their first subscription renewal. And I want to do something really specific at that moment. And if it's not that moment, they get a baseline one. So like I really want to see the waterfall of first match priority, where you can create custom experiences for people based on predefined parameters. If they fit into it, great, they get this. If they don't, then they get, do they match this? Great. No. If they don't, do they match this? Great. If no, they get the baseline experience. But there's so much that I think a smart operator could do to really level things up.
And think of some of the different use cases, right? Like, one of our clients is like very good at like, you buy a device and here's the subscription for it. So they're really good at selling that. Maybe not always like above board, but it's like, here you go. And then people go cancel that right away. I would kill for that feature right now, where I could just say, hey, within 3 days of your first order, I'm going to explain the crap out of everything and be really aggressive with the offer to get you to stay. Whereas after your first renewal, like it's a different experience. It's like, I want it to be more tailored, understand the reason, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Right.
It's a really good idea. It makes me not want to share any of my ideas now because I'm feeling a little intimidated. But does anybody else want to react to anything Bryan said before?
I can jump in because I got a second analytics to me too. It's just, I think the big thing, understanding customer cohorts a lot better, and low LTV, mid LTV, high LTV, and seeing, because now I've started really kind of, winter is upon me, so I am starting to slow down and read a bunch of stuff now, and been nerding out about this customer centricity playbook. And Peter Fader, talks about customer centricity, one of the founders of that premise. And fundamental strategy there is to develop services and products that are designed for current and future needs of your most profitable, highest LTV customers, to grow your basically free cash flow profits to long term. Right. So this idea of being able to, in an actionable way, understand what low tier customers are doing, mid tier customers are doing, and high tier customers are doing. I'm still surprised that we don't have any analytics like that.
No, you could target like dollar spent or numbers, but you don't get to see data like you would with like a recency or frequency analysis, right? Like to see
you totally
can't.
Having those LTR buckets, if you had just like, not just cohort charts, but if you were just like, just like you said, here group, how many people, what percentage of your overall customer file, is sub $100 in LTR, 100 to 150, 150 to 200, 200 to 250, 300 plus, whatever. Here's like 20 different actions that you could take, right? Use a quick action, update your flavor, delay in your portal, bought X product, 1 month, 2 month, 3 month delivery cadence, and like what percentage of each one of these LTR cohorts took each one of these actions.
Mm-hmm.
And like, what are the specific behaviors, first purchase products, back end stuff are most highly correlated with high LTV customers?
Yeah.
And it's like, great. Well, like go get them to do more of that stuff.
Yeah.
The interesting thing though, like, so I agree with everything you just said. Like I am first on the analytics. Almost all of us probably use other platforms or we manually do this stuff ourselves. So 100% analytics, especially cohort stuff. I think they're a huge opportunity, and not just being subscription focused only. It's like be able to look at both one time and subscription, right? Because that's a really important dynamic that you need to be paying attention to. The interesting thing though, on the customizing the cancel flow, I agree with you that functionality would be amazing. Figuring out a way to automate it would be the only way I see that like actually getting used as a feature, besides the 4 of us and maybe like 10 other people and maybe a couple other geeks out there that are running brands. But it's like, when we talk, the reason we all exist as agencies and consultants and everything in between, like, is because it's really hard to take advantage of all the features that exist today in the platform.
Sure.
And it's overwhelming. And so like to add even more complexity on top of that would be really beneficial to us, I think. But to the average user,
what if it's actually simplifying complexity though? Because I think to kind of coming down in between what you guys are saying, I have this funny thing of like when I'm saying, if you show somebody a subscription app and their analytics and I just like skim over everything and they're like, wait, you don't, I'm like, yeah, I don't look at like 90% of this stuff doesn't matter to me. Like, do you really want to use X platform's revenue reporting for you? No, you should look at Shopify because they're actually processing the payments for you. Like, I don't care about this and this and this. But so maybe it's like quit creating random reports that nobody looks at and start looking at like, here's where real revenue happens. And if you want to go deeper, maybe there's like a tab or something. So I think that there are more people that care about that, like especially like CRO people that are looking at some of those things. But yes, in general, the average subscription user would be overwhelmed by all of that because they're already overwhelmed.
Yeah, including the analytics. I think you're right. Yeah, 100%. And it's like there's like a handful of metrics that really matter, and I think most people don't know how to dissect that and pay attention to it.
Yeah. But I think what Bryan raises up is like, that's some of the stuff that's made like, prompting with ChatGPT really fun is like, yes, I can upload an entire export. The thing that's actually frustrating to me is when I do an export that I can't get all the data that I want to get, right? Like I think Skio, when you export, will show you the number of cycles that they've done, but Recharge doesn't do that, right? Recharge shows you a start date and lifetime revenue. So like between all of them, when you do an export, I never get quite as much info as I want to get a full report, regardless of the platform. There's always some little bit missing, but then you can put all that into ChatGPT and ask questions like, hey, looking at sign up date and cancel date, like what are those average, like, so yes, we're already building that stuff, but it'd be really nice to be able to, and you hope the AI would help enable a lot of that stuff, but maybe in time.
Yeah.
I wouldn't try. I mean, I don't know. I'm hesitant to trust important stuff like that to the AI analysis. It's like we're freaking still old school. Just parsing, like sitting with an Excel spreadsheet and building. I have gotten so much better, guys, at building Excel models this year.
Yours are pretty good, man. Yours are pretty good.
Oh, you haven't.
And I haven't even seen the research.
You have not seen anything.
No, I love that.
We are.
No, I will say for me, it's good. For me, it's good for quick analysis. That's where I like to do it. And then, thankfully, I have a data analyst too that works with us part time. She's much better at all that.
Bryan, just to double click on that, are you doing that to forecast so that they understand, like, as you do these levers, this will have that impact, or what's the outcome? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, mostly forecasting LTV to payback, scenario planning.
Yep.
Yeah, those are some of the big ones. Profitability by product and SKU and scenario planning on different levers.
Love it.
It's getting kind of intense. But like that's the thing though. Like that's been the biggest unlock for us, is just being able to actually not just like, here's how our subscription program is changing, but like, here's how that would actually impact your business.
Mm-hmm.
And like forecast that forward in a meaningful way, be able to bring in ad spend, different projections and all kinds of things. Because like, if you're thinking, I mean, we just have so many brands right now that are like, we're thinking about our 2026 plan and priorities and what should we actually focus on. And you know, subscriptions is not the actual goal, right? It's like returning revenue, it's growth of the business, it's overall profitability. Subscriptions are just, you know,
A mechanism.
they're just
for that.
a mechanism to accomplish that and improve the predictability of the revenue and return it, you know, improve purchase rate. But yeah, so mostly forecasting, I would say right now.
Yeah. I'm still blown away that we don't have predictive churn analytics. Like we have so much customer data.
It exists outside of D2C. Like if you've worked in like subscriptions and looked at like a lot of other revenue forecasting platforms, granted the deal sizes are often a lot bigger, but yeah,
totally. But I mean, seriously, and like, not to keep going back to this, but like none of the subscription apps have something that's like, hey, if everything stays the same with your current trajectory, here's where you would be in 6 to 12 months. Like, is that where you want it to be?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because if not, like, you know, something's got to change. And like, our system, like, we think that churn is probably your biggest opportunity. Like,
well,
all of these subscription apps are so like, why can't we get people to adopt our stuff? And like, that's why.
Well, the funny thing too is like, if you just look at just basic forecasting, so like if you look at a forecasting of future revenue, none of the subscription apps will use your historical churn data to predict how many subscribers you'll have a month from now. So if you have average 10% churn and they're predicting revenue for 30 days or 60 days from now, it's assuming that you will grow and or capture the revenue you currently have, and it won't lop off 10%.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is like a basic, like very basic, actually the statistical analysis that's actually very simple. But okay, here's mine. I've got two because maybe they're not as cool as some of the ones you guys have said before. But I would say this is kind of more of like a gripe for me, is because they all have varying degrees of being able to do this. I would love to be able to test whatever I want to test, whether it's a quick action link or a portal view or all this stuff, as the actual subscriber. Because right now, depending on the platform, you have to have a test subscription. You have to trigger that through Klaviyo and all this other stuff. Some of them can do some of this. Like, we're not turning this into a feature war set between all the platforms. So there are varying degrees of this, but that is one of the most annoying things to me in the world, where I'm trying to set up like a win back action and I have to have a canceled subscription to be able to test that, because this platform won't let me simulate what that subscriber would see. And I get the security elements of this, because they've probably all heard me gripe about this. So I understand why you don't open it up in a certain way, but some kind of testing feature, because how many of us have built a link in Recharge or another platform and you go to test it and it doesn't work and you don't know why? And so then you have to try again and then reach out to support. And then it turns out that, like, I found out that, recently I found out like the prepaid swap function, like swap functionality in Recharge isn't supported for prepaid subscriptions. Okay, great. So I can't use a quick action link if somebody has a prepaid subscription. So anyway, so that's kind of like my first gripe there. What I think would be better for testing, but yeah, go ahead.
One of the ways I've gotten around that, because I agree. I mean, it's so frustrating that you can't do that. One of the things I've started doing is I just subscribe to all of my clients now.
Oh, yeah.
So that I can cancel it. I can revisit, like the portal allows you, all the portals allow you so much functionality now that I'm just constantly like manipulating my subscription and then delaying it, until I need it. And then
that is what we're doing. But at the same, that's also extremely annoying to me, because it's like, okay, so now I need to go in and set up this profile. I need to add in the right product to make sure that I can swap it with this other product to go test, or I need to make sure that when I do this win back, that this cancellation product will come back in. Oh, it turns out there's this other little setting or restriction, Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. To just pile onto the feature pile. I mean, sorry, churn reasons by order number, or subscription age. Like, oh, okay, customers on order 1, 2, 3, or on order 1, they're churning for these reasons. On order 2, they're churning for these reasons. Some apps have started to do that. Some apps have had it for a long time, but I'd love to see that just across the board. Just a better understanding of customer engagement and customer data, I think is going to be the best proactive way to handle, just in a more actionable way to handle these as a brand. Because if I can look at my churn analytics, and at least now I know, okay, before order 2, here's what I need to keep in mind and try to manage expectations, either with onboarding, unboxing inserts, SMS, right? So to me, the fact that we're still have it's very opaque, the customer journey and what they're doing through that customer journey from first order to cancellation is so hard to understand. You need to exactly become an Excel wizard or try to be, at least.
Yeah. And I would say the other thing that this is being built, but I just think a ton about customer experience and like SMS. And so I'm just really excited for the world where, and our new subscription app we're talking about would have this right out of the gate, already be built, but is the ability to have like full conversational control over a subscription, right? So that it's like you're talking to a real person, you get what you need. And then on top of that, the app has layered intelligence so that it understands some of the predictive churn. Like we're all talking about some of the different, we want to know what happens here. So it knows all that as well. So from a situational standpoint, the first couple of days, it's much more like educational, exciting for you kind of thing. Whereas later on, it's just trying to make sure you get what you need and don't make a big fuss kind of thing. Right. So I'd be really curious to see how a brand is able to like really go far with that kind of control when there's some trust, and AI empowering the right experience at the right time, like true personalization, not just they know your name and they know what you ordered, but if they know where you live, they know what time of year it is, they know what order number you're on, they know what other people that have had that product have said about it or complained about it or whatever. So anyway, that's where I'm really excited to see happen.
Yeah. I'm fully with you. Actually, Jordan and I had this conversation. We were talking about what the subscription 3.0 look like, right? And that sort of very personalized communication channel. I do think this is why obviously Recharge is doubling down on SMS and then concierge product. And this is kind of what we've seen too, is that it becomes the default conversation channel between subscribers and the brand. But even with its very, very limited feature set right now, it's kind of a couple of upcoming order notifications and letting you conversationally control the orders, and some really cool cancellation deflection features of just like if customers just text back cancel, it's like, hey, I can cancel this order, but the next order will be set. We'll tell you a reminder before the next order set. Is that okay? And like 80% of customers say yes. So that becomes like the channel for basically LTV growth. And if they do want to cancel the whole subscription, you still send them through the entire cancel flow. But I think it's just a no-brainer channel to try to include things like onboarding, education, customer surveys, and just boost engagement and LTV development, really. I know it's really difficult to get a poor fit subscriber to become a high LTV subscriber from the get-go because, different people have different propensity, like the product either doesn't work for them or things along the lines of that. But kind of training them how to update their subscription, change the frequency, making those suggestions would be really sweet. That's kind of the potential of AI in the conversational way in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I mean, like, I was actually going to bring up this exact point, and we might all have different definitions of this, but like Andre and I were talking a few weeks ago about, subscriptions 1.0 was just like when subscriptions were kind of the wild, wild west, where it was like, just get them on, like it was kind of shady. It was like, get them on.
But yeah.
It was shady. Yeah. And it sounds like it's still kind of.
Well, the FTC wanted to step in for a reason.
Yeah. So 1.0 is shady. Get them on, like do everything to maximize the short-term value from customers. I would say subscriptions 2.0 by my definition, but it sounds like a lot of brands still are not doing this based on talking to you guys, is like now people recognize you can actually extract longer lifetime value from customers if you give them more flexibility and actually educate them and help them understand how to use the platform, so that and make it easier to take actions that are delaying or skipping versus cancel. I put that all into bucket 2.0, but where I see 3.0 is this like personalized and AI enabled future.
Yeah.
And it's leading with like proactive, indicators of, are people going to churn? And there's some really interesting like technologies. So I would add this is going to be where I was going to go, is like, I think there's some interesting technologies that are starting to emerge that are more proactive in nature. I definitely think the platforms could do some of this as well. But honestly, a lot of this was inspired by the way Andre approaches his subscription clients is so different than mine, which is really cool. Like, I think it's really fun to see how everybody approaches subscriptions and how to optimize for them. But Andre is like much more academic than me and much more thoughtful, I would say, and takes a much more research-based approach where he does a ton of deep analysis on like what he calls the ideal subscriber persona.
And I got that from Bryan.
Maybe you got it from Bryan, so it's circular. But this idea of like really deep research that leads to, the roadmap that you identify from there. And I think there's a lot of like clear indicators that lead to churn, right? Like an NPS survey in your first 15 days is the number one predictor of, is someone going to cancel, right? If they're not happy. Mm. So can we do things that have touch points before the number one reason for canceling, which is I have too much product? And can you get ahead of that? That, to me, that's the future, is proactive churn mitigation.
Yeah. I think of it as like engagement too. Like if I can, because I get asked this sometimes when people, you do a little podcast and somebody's like, well, would you ever start your own subscription brand? And I think, well, I would want one that had a lot of engagement communication. Because if I knew if I can get people to engage with me, that they're going to be much more willing to stick around. So I do think that that's where like the future personalization is like, guided onboarding and all this stuff. I do want to call out the FTC thing though, because we've chatted about this like in our group chat, is keep in mind that like, I think sometimes it's easy to think of like our space as being the subscription space, but we're just like actually a tiny sliver in the subscription economy.
Space, yeah.
Right. So like Shopify based brands for subscriptions are a drop in the bucket compared to like, all the subscriptions that are out there when you look at, Netflix, Amazon, Xbox, all that stuff. So I think because I think it's easy to sometimes get really worried about what the FTC is doing. I do think that Shopify brands in general, even the ones that maybe are a little shady, are nowhere near as shady as some of the other 1.0 practices where you had no idea it was a subscription whatsoever. Mm-hmm. Like Shopify requires a checkbox that you at least understand that you have one, right? Like, in worst case scenarios, you don't like it, you cancel and you can do a chargeback, right? Like, but I do think it is getting better, but we can talk about the legal implications about it, but except we should bring a lawyer on because I'm not a lawyer. I just play one on TV. Okay. All right.
Some good stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of really good ideas.
Yeah. Okay. So subscription Armageddon is over for now. We're going to put that one up on the shelf. I know that all of us talk product with all the apps all the time. So it's probably, I'm not sure any subscription app provider out there is like, ooh, that was really, or if it is really cool, that's like 2 years down the road. But I think what's important for anyone listening is to think about, this is what we think is important. That's why we did that segment, for you to think through some of the ways that we're thinking about and why we approach things the way that we do and why you should be doing that same thing. So in the same spirit of that, Bryan, you mentioned 2026 planning. So I would love to now have a discussion around what have you guys been testing, or what are you seeing working is the first half of it that you want other people to be doing next year or should be thinking about next year?
That's a really good question. I feel there's a couple buckets. Like one, I think everybody's realizing that if their business is subscription relevant, that leaning into the subscription model is a good idea. As simple as that sounds. Like, all of us, every time we look at a brand, right, their subscribers are 2 to 3 times more valuable than their one-time purchase customers. And a subscriber typically, has much better payback economics, much better long-term profitability. And I think brands are realizing that. So it's like going into 2026, I would say, if thinking about 2025, it was a big year of that. Like, I'm sure a lot of you felt that there was like a lot of tailwinds behind like people realizing, oh, we need to like really put some thought into our subscription.
Right.
Program.
Much more attention. Yep.
Yeah. And I feel, I have a slightly different perspective maybe than like Jordan on the state of like the subscription, the state of the subscription industry and like what I'm seeing a lot of. And I feel that it almost kind of, for a lot of the fastest growing brands, went the other way. Like went not just like, let's lean into subscriptions, but like, let's really squeeze it. Like it's really max it. Yeah. And you wonder how like the fastest growing sub brands are growing. And a lot of them are doing things, let's say, that are making the short-term profitability and the short-term payback work very, very well, but are causing a lot of systemic and structural issues for retention on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no way. Yeah. And so like you can't actually fix. And Jordan, you had I think it was John or Andre, you had a really good point, which is basically the earlier you address churn and cancellations and the things that drive it, the more effective it is. It's like the best place to address churn is at the moment of conversion. And it's the pre-frame of that new subscriber. It's like, what are they thinking about? What are their intentions in the pre-frame when they purchase? Are they on the right quantity, cadence, variant? Do they understand that? Unboxing, like, are you getting them right away with, here's how to get started with this? Are you checking in with them? Are you driving adoption and usage? Are you encouraging them to right size their cadence? All of those things. And, are you making an intentional choice to subscribe? And I think a lot of those things are the things that a lot of brands have forgotten. Mm-hmm. And it helps with short-term profitability and payback, which allows them to grow, but it sacrifices long-term retention and it sacrifices customer experience and creates a compounding negative goodwill cycle on the back end.
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited. Like, this sounds like very meta, but for me personally, like, I think that 2026 is actually going to be a bit of a year of a recalibration around optimizing for long-term customer value and experience on the subscription model, and operators and brands feeling like they actually have the data and the financial kind of understanding and modeling to be able to support mathematically why doing that kind of stuff is actually better for their business.
Yeah.
And that's like a lot of what we're working on. But I'm like, I'd say that going into the new year, I'm very, very excited because it feels like there's a shift happening where a lot of brands are they're coming back to this idea that, like, listen, like, you can grow to a certain point, you can grow really fast to a certain point, but like, you can't outrun a, subpar product, or you can't outrun, poor customer experience for very long. And eventually it catches up to you and you get stuck and you have to keep plowing more and more money back into acquisition to just not drop like a rock. And I think that there's a real turn there.
Yep.
Bryan, I love that, because we were chatting about this, like, in our group. By the way, if I references already, we have a group text. If you can't imagine, we were talking about this a little bit recently, and actually the podcast newsletter episode that I have that came out this week was actually talking about this. I probably didn't go as far as I could have gone or should have gone, but I think it's important for everybody that's listening to this to understand something. The fastest growing subscription brands are not making choices based off of LTV as much as they are like CAC to payback period. So the difference is they're looking at how much money am I putting in now from a marketing efficiency, cash back as quickly as possible standpoint, which allows me to then spend more money to acquire more customers like that. They are growth experts. They are not necessarily like, I mean, have you guys met anybody who's like a former retention expert who starts a brand? Like, they're often like growth people, right? Growth or brand people. So maybe a retention person would be totally different. And so the idea is you do reach a cap at some point where the bucket you can't keep getting a bigger bucket. You have to figure out how to make your bucket, like what we are acquiring, last longer. So I love to hear you saying that, Bryan, because I want to see more of that. Like when I talked about my thing for the SMS stuff, it's like, I want to see more brands like getting creative, like how they're engaging, like how they're like, have you guys heard of Redeem? I met their founders recently. They're like a loyalty retention app, and they're just trying to create like more experiences around loyalty. So it's not just like go redeem a point or something. It's like they're working like with a sunscreen brand, and it's like post a selfie of you like at the beach or in a swimsuit and get points back. So it's like having more ways to like be fun and be engaging and understand what people care about. So yeah, I love to hear you say that, Bryan, because I would love to see more and more of that. Maybe not correction, but like
I feel like there's a turn,
because I feel like
I really do, and like that it genuinely makes me feel optimistic.
Yeah.
And I feel that there's no brands, and I'll say this and I'll shut up. Like there's very few brands out there, very few companies that are actively trying to create a poor customer experience. Like nobody's being like, I want to create a bad customer experience. But when that's put up against economics wins most of the time.
Yeah.
And the opportunity, and I think which is what people are waking up to, even the people that have previously made decisions kind of for their subscription architecture and everything that weren't super customer centric, they're realizing, I think with the right math, that if they're willing to delay payback 30 days, if they can float an extra 30 days or something like that, they could double LTV over 12 months.
Yeah.
Right. And that at a certain scale now becomes very, very compelling because you have the cash foundation to be able to float that slightly longer payback. And so like what got you to that level is not necessarily the thing that's going to get you to the next level of growth.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that sentiment more, and I'm feeling it on this end too. Like some of the interesting industry stats that because I started to work on an article just kind of literally talking about this exact issue. I think right now a ton of like the D2C subscription industry grew. I've heard the number float around 50% year over year this year. 15% of that of brands actually pre-select, subscribe, and save. So you can think about out of the brands that offer subscriptions, very small minority actually go for subscribers first, and that's primarily because their head executive team is connected to marketing and CAC is rising. So marketing hones in on subscriptions first and they chase those subscription financials. But the rest of the team, CRM, retention, support is left holding the bag afterwards. So we figured out how to get to 60, 80% subscription opt-in rates. But what's actually happening is that we're still seeing 60% for most brands, 60% of customers churn by order 3. So it's like we're feeding a ton of shoppers into this system and they're leaving with bad taste in their mouth, right? Talking about FTC coming in and being like, hey, maybe there's some regulation. I think that's going to, maybe it's not necessarily DTC focused, but I do think like some self-regulation from the industry is a really good thing. And I think it's fundamentally is that, businesses went all in on subscriptions, at least the marketing teams went. But what really is holding the industry back from growth is that taking that 85% of brands who offer subscriptions, but they're not really quote unquote focusing on it. And I think it's the reason, like when I talk to brands, and I'd be curious for you guys too, most of the brands that I worked with are that 15% of like, we already went in, we need to fix retention post hoc, right? Some of the brands I work with are like, hey, we know subscriptions are going to be really, really important, but we don't want to be aggressively onboarding people because maybe we tried it and then churn went up through the roof, support went through the roof. We're a legacy brand. We have customers for 40 years. We don't want to create a bad experience. So they unconsciously or consciously know that their subscription experience is subpar. And I think and the biggest thing is not even acquisition or churn, it's like change management and org change management and like the know-how of how to take the whole company to become subscriber first or customer centric rather than just the marketing, right? So it's like, how do you get everybody to start tracking CAC to LTV ratios and thinking about retention? So, and I'm with Bryan totally, is like I'm starting to see, and I think that's the biggest growth opportunity for the industry overall. So I think it's a lot more like, how do you get clear or clarity from top down that, hey, it's not just marketing who's responsible for subscriber acquisition. Cause it's a typical life cycle that we see is a brand jumps on, they see LTV difference between subscriber one-time purchasers. They start basically converting subscribers at all costs. Then they go, okay, maybe we should go subscriptions all in and only offer subscriptions. Then they go, you know what? We're actually subscriptions in one time is still probably best for our conversion rates. And then after a while, the whole team tries to figure out, the retention team, the CRM team, the support team. It's like, oh, okay, we slowly over a year typically takes, is kind of what it looks like, slowly realize, oh, okay, this is how we become subscriber focused. So I think the industry's starting to wake up to that. And I think that's the biggest opportunity for growth, because it's like that sleeping kind of brand cohort that is not yet willing to jump all the way in, because the financials are totally there. But yeah, I think I'm fully with Bryan here. And that's what actually exactly the same thing makes me hopeful. That's kind of like the good behind good subscription agency is like transparent, flexible, customer centric is the way to grow. So I'm pretty excited about that.
But I have a question that I guess maybe might help reframe churn a little bit, because I guess everything that you're saying, like 60% of customers canceling after 3 orders, it implies that like the customer had a bad experience. That's why they're canceling, right? But in reality, it's like maybe you just built up too much product, and yeah, the frequency could have been adjusted and it could have been a better experience, sure, on that front. But like if a customer has, like, this happens to me all the time. I subscribe to a product. I mean, this happens to everybody all the time, because this is the number one reason why everybody cancels. But it's like you subscribe to a product, you start taking it, but maybe you're not using it at the frequency that that it's going to repeat. And so eventually it builds up, and maybe you cancel your subscription. But to me, it's like, I'm not a lost customer to that brand. I'm probably just going to like take my time over the next few months, finish that product, and then maybe come back for a one-time purchase or a subscription. But it's not like, unless it's the cancel flow is telling you it's product related or like an issue with something else, but that's not the majority of, in my experience, of why people are canceling. So it's not like you've lost that customer. So like what you guys are describing to me feels like it's not as bleak, like losing a customer.
Well, I mean,
I'll
I don't know.
Do you some data.
I'd push back on that too. Yeah.
I'm going to say, like, do you guys feel like you can look at a cohort retention and know if they have a product that does what they say it does?
100%. The shapes of subscriber retention.
Yeah.
There's distinct shapes, and if you see enough of them,
So I think, like, for me, this is completely anecdotal. Like, I have tons of research on the frequency changes and unlocking LTV stuff, but I do think that in general, like, getting the frequency and cadence down right is usually like a 10 to 20%, like affects 10 to 20% of your subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're like aggressively like, here's 6 months supply and we sold it to you on a 1-month subscription. So I think that it's like a segment of your subscribers are impacted by not having the right amount. Most people have, on average, what will, for me, think about like, okay, if I have a quarter bag left of protein powder, I'm not going to cancel my subscription. I do think, though, like, if you're losing 60% of your subscribers by month 3, I do think that's a product problem. And it might not be, it might be like, yes, you force people to buy too much, or it's not the right amount, but it's generally like you're not onboarding them right, or you claim that it was going to do this, or it takes 3 months to see, like, there's a lot of things that can be product, but sometimes it is just like the product maybe isn't really worth that, or it has too many other competitors.
Mm-hmm.
And then people.
And you said like 6-month supply every 1 month.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of brands do. I mean, like, that is,
they do.
Like how many subscription brands, that's a mechanism to drive up first order AOV. And it's to just sell as much as you can and gamify as much product as big an order on the first purchase, or multiple products on subscription. And there's like a natural consumption cycle that if your subscription offer is just not aligned with the customer's natural consumption cycle, you're always going to be dealing with a huge churn.
Yeah.
And the one thing I'll say, Jordan, on that is, like, I see your point, and it's like all churn is not bad. And it's a lot of it is just going to happen naturally. In fact, with a lot of the modeling we're doing, we recommend that brands actively try to go for worse order 2 retention than what they have, in favor of optimizing for order 3 retention. Like, we show them, like, you can actually take a 10 to 15 point hit on order 2 retention if you can get order 3 retention, 10 points higher, and then the flow through retention curve. It's better for you in the long term. But it really changes your behavior. And the thing is, though, the truth is that once somebody cancels, most of them never come back.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like there's so many other options. It's just like why you could have people pause. And for most brands that allow indefinite pausing versus canceling, the pause to unpause ratio is like 10-1. You know, it's like 95-5.
Yeah,
Like
get
5,
rid,
10.
get rid of
Yeah.
pause.
Get rid of pause.
Get rid of pause.
But it's the same thing with cancel. It's like you don't want to leave a bad taste in their mouth because they're going to go crap on you on Facebook and tell all their friends you were a scam and post on Trustpilot. But like you also, you know, once you lose them, you kind of lose them for the most part.
Yeah. Yep. Recharge has kind of pretty good checkout rate, basically checkout analytics, and you can see, hey, how many of your churned customers are coming back to place a purchase. And it's always like sample size of whatever brand's small, but it's generally like under 10. And that's even best case scenario. I think it's also important to keep in mind like the customer life cycle and like low LTV customer or like first 3 orders. The biggest issue might be questions of product and product fit, right? I worked with a ton of pet companies this year. So it's a question of like, does the dog eat it? Do you see the effects? And that's the first 3 orders. And then after that, it's about subscription cadence and order delivery, right? And that's what I was ranting about, like better insights into customer issues and customer churn issues based on order number or subscription age. Because like, it's not that customers, and the thing about really aggressively acquiring is that you will have a lot of customers who might be a bad fit for the product at first. And then out of them, 30-40% of customers will stick around and they will make massive money for you because they will stick around for 10, 20, 30 orders, especially if your ad creative and your top of funnel creative talks to that ideal subscriber cohort. Maybe you're not leading with discounts, but you're talking about convenience of automated shipping, SMS notifications before your orders, that kind of thing. But yeah, generally speaking, I think it's better adapting to and educating customers on kind of why, being proactive about churn reasons based on their customer life stage is, I think a big unlock, something I'm really looking forward to getting more insights into from these platforms too.
Jordan, what's your 2026 thing that you're excited to be doing, testing, or that more brands should be paying attention to?
I mean, if you zoom out, I was talking to someone recently about this. Brands dedicate so much budget for acquisition and give 0 budget for retention.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I mean, selfishly, that's, I think, what we all believe. But I really think like if you are strategic and you think about growth levers and you don't just focus on acquisition as your only growth lever, I would be dedicating real money towards retention efforts, right? And that can come in a lot of shapes and forms. That can come through like, you know, hiring people like us, but I'd say more like realistically, it's actually coming from like finding the right people internally, externally to support the features that you can enable through these platforms. And more importantly, like thinking about maybe gifts and incentives over time. What are other tactics you can do? Investing in the right research, like we were just describing, for the ideal subscriber persona, or the flows that support that usage and frequency behavior.
Yeah.
So I think it's just like zooming out and thinking about like what are growth levers and dedicating some real time, attention, and probably dollars towards, and probably only still like 10% of your budget needs to go towards this, maybe 5, but like not 0, right? Which is what it mostly is for brands today, even big brands.
How many of our clients, past or present, or brands we have audited or worked with, will have the most crack acquisition team with like 10 years experience, incredible retainer, or somebody on staff, a performance marketer who's like, you know, $250K a year, and they'll have like a part-time retention person and somebody with 2 years experience in email.
Yeah.
And it's like 9 out of 10 times. So it is a thing.
Someone told me that the ratio of acquisition to retention people at companies is on average 5x. So it's like there's 5 times more resources dedicated. And honestly, I think that's low. I think it's probably more like 10x.
Yeah. Yeah. If you look at total expenses, total dollar bill that one team pulls versus the other, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
And then where do you guys see the balance of trade-off there, though? Because I will say, like, so you're saying everything I normally say, and I have an annoying habit of being devil's advocate, maybe more than I should. But the idea is like, okay, well, there's nothing, if I don't have people in, there's nothing to retain, right? And it's all about cash and keeping the business alive and the lights on, and being able to get enough capital to buy product that I can sell 6 months from now. Where is the trade-off then between how I'm investing in growth versus how I'm investing in retention? Like, I could jump to what I think, but I want to hear what you guys like, how you react to that.
I think you did a really good podcast on this recently. One of the podcasts I listened to that you like, I don't know what context you were talking about it, but you described like different scenarios. And I bucket my clients into a few different buckets. There's like new or migrating subscriber persona, or there's like really high growth, but really high churn bucket, right? So maybe you have like, you're doing really well. You're like crushing adoption. You're like, everybody's subscribing, but your churn rate's like 20 to 30%. Like that's a real bucket. And then you have the bucket of people who actually are like, their adoption's horrible, but their churn's pretty good, right? Like those are the three main buckets that I would say like we typically come across. I think you start there. And so therefore your tactics should be very different depending on what bucket you fall into. And so I don't think it is a one size fits all, but I think it's different.
Let's stick with those buckets, because I want to push on this a little bit more. So I would argue that anybody who's bad at acquisition but good at churn just hasn't ever invested in acquisition. So they're not this use case. And people that are new to subscriptions, they don't know what they don't know yet. So let's start with that's the main cohort that is the problem, are the ones that are really good at growth. And, Bryan has talked about this of like where he's seeing like these fast growing brands. And I mentioned this similar experiences where they're obsessed with their CAC and their cash to conversion cycle, which are good numbers. And they don't know why retention is the way it is. So how do you tell a brand like that?
Yeah, I just did an audit for a brand on this.
Well, I want to say one last thing, because some of what Bryan said was like fundamentally shifting how they're doing. That's not a tweak. It's like, we're going to change how we sell up front because we know the LTV will be better. That is actually a big jump for any brand, especially if you're talking about a brand who's maybe doing 30, 40, 50 million.
I guess one brand. And I think
that's potentially like killing the business if you don't do it. So that caveat.
Yep. I would say like there's one brand that I worked with recently that fits this bucket that I can describe. And I think this will kind of overlay with a lot of what you guys are describing. So this brand did an exceptional job of getting customers to opt in to subscription. They had like an 80% opt-in rate, 80 to 85% opt-in rate, depending on the month. Wow. But their offer was 50% off your first subscription offer. And then it decreased to still a ridiculously high 35% off all subsequent orders. Actually, it like varied quite a lot. It was like between 25 and 35%. It was way too complex. It was very complicated. My biggest like recommendation because you can imagine their churn was exceptionally high, 25 to 30%, depending on how you define it. My number one recommendation was to reduce the amount that they're giving to subscribers. And that's going to reduce your opt-in rate, but it's going to increase your churn rate, because like we talked about, there is a sweet spot, right? In this relationship between your opt-in rate and your churn rate. And you can go too far, which I would argue what you guys are kind of describing that. Like there's a lot of really high growth that are like very recognized in the industry, and they absolutely crush growth. But I see their ads and I'm like, they're giving way too much away. They're never going to, like 50% of these customers are going to cancel, right? Like, cause their offer's too good, right? Because anything above 40% as an evergreen offer, in my opinion, is probably too high. That's like generally what I've found. And so 50% is too high. Like, I'm not saying that for literally ubiquitously, but I found like anecdotally, and I've done this with maybe 25, 30 brands now. Generally over 40%, you're giving too much away. You're going to get too high of a churn, and you should probably test a lower offer and see how that impacts your month one retention in the following month.
Yeah. Well, just to riff on that, I think to me, again, coming back to this kind of customer centricity idea, the thing is that you want to focus on acquiring high LTV customers, right? So it basically exactly Bryan's Bryan's logic of, hey, listen, even if you or lose some low LTV customers along the way, you're focusing on customers who are not placing a second order. You're focusing on customers who are placing 5, 10, 20 orders. They love what you do, that you have an awesome product fit, and they're buying multiple SKUs and they're talking to their friends about you. Right. So and the thing is, you can have a very aggressive offer to try to effectively there's this kind of customer centricity paradox where you want to acquire super high LTV customers, but there's a small cohort, right? And it has to be very targeted. But to keep up with growth, you need to also acquire mid-tier and low-tier customers as well, because out of those, you could potentially develop somebody to become a mid or a high-tier customer. But fundamentally, it's like, are you really? So it's a really tricky balance. And I think it's exactly like you said, there is a sweet spot between, am I giving away 50% off, and how many of these customers will actually become order 5, 10, 20 and refer a friend because they're just ecstatic about you? Probably 20, 30%. The crazy part is that those 30% will pay for everyone's acquisition. And because they are placing order 10, order 15, and they're paying high, and they're likely going to be paying a lower subscription discount on those orders too, because they're not in it for the discount. They're in it because the product is great. That's why, you constantly see, and now that's a thing that we're seeing get popularized more on sign up offers, is first order is discount 20%, 30%, and then everything subsequent is 10% off, 5% off. I've even seen some people just downgrade it to just free shipping for subscribers. And yes, you'll have higher churn on order 2, but just kind of letting the product do the retention. It is very much a balance. And I think it just takes time, and you're knowing your own customer audience, knowing your marketing channels, how are you engaging with them? So, and yeah, it's a lot of practice.
I want to say because this is right in, I promise I was thinking this before this giant long discussion, because I had this on my podcast recently, is my big push for 2026 would be every brand that doesn't already have a clear view of lifetime value or the lifetime revenue of a customer, they should model that. Take it as a snapshot right now. If you don't have systems in place to make it dynamic or something that can be easily that you can look at, then you should be seriously considering how to invest in that. And go one step further, understand the profitability. So like true lifetime value is actually margin contribution. So you understand that each shipment we make, and this is where subscription apps can struggle, because they're often showing you who hasn't canceled, not necessarily who has processed. Shopify can show you that. You can do exports to see this, but it's try to get a really good understanding of what your average subscriber is worth over 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, a year kind of thing. Everything Bryan has said, everything we're all saying is because we look at those numbers and we go, oh, we should be doing something different to optimize for this path or this type of customer. So I would say anybody listening, like if you're thinking about what you really need to worry about, is get a clear picture of that. The coolest brands I've ever talked to and worked with, they do that really, really well. Like that's how they figure out scale.
Yeah. I'm like such a proponent of that. I think everything we do starts with analytics. And I think the thing to call out that most people don't recognize is when you're looking at Shopify, they have one definition of subscription revenue, which is very conservative because it's based on the first order. And like someone could come back the following month and order a subscription, and that would not count in that cohort. So very conservative Shopify cohort view. And then the subscription platforms recognize pretty much everything that ever happened to a subscriber, even if it was a one-time order. So there's like trickiness in this. And so I do agree with, you have to first define it, because there is not, just like marketing attribution is hard, actually understanding what your revenue is. And so I agree, like going to the true source of orders over time is probably the best way to measure this, but you have to probably rely on a platform beyond just Shopify's standard out of the box cohort, because that's going to be very conservative.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've got a bunch of thoughts. I was thinking about like this conversation. I just think it's really important for brands that regardless of the stage of they're in, just to kind of like think about the different scenarios. So like, what do you guys think for the average one-time purchase customer that comes in for like a supplement brand or skincare or whatever? Like, what do you see as the average monthly repurchase rate for a one-time purchase customer? Like what percentage of your OTP customer cohort comes back the next month of their own volition most of the time? For
10 to 20%. If it's over that,
next month,
pretty good.
Yeah.
I'd say each subsequent month is like, right. What were you saying, Andre?
Yeah. I was going to say per quarter, if a 50 to 60%, I see like if you extend it to 90 days, typically I think that's one of like 50 to 60% if for some of the brands we worked with.
That's very good. That would be
He's saying that have come back at all, not come back.
That have come back at all, not to subscribe, just purchased one, then came back for a second. Supplements though is a tough one, and this might not. This is a slightly different product. Well, it's a male performance enhancement product, so it's a little different. That the effects are very obvious. Supplements have a very subtle. Obviously, it's like a lot of it is buying into the brand and buying into the long-term effects, and some Jordan and I love to nerd out about Fatty 15 and their customer retention. And they're talking about 70% of customers right on their acquisition funnel in the product pages. 75% of customers notice effects within 16 weeks. It's like a 4-month term of kind of expected results. And they do a very good job of bringing mindful attention to those very subtle kind of changes that you might notice with like continuous surveys and symptom trackers and that kind of thing. But overall, I would say for most supplement brands, probably low, probably in that 20 to 30 range. Yeah.
Yeah. So just think about this. Let's just say you're a supplement brand and you have a 40% repurchase rate within 6 months, 50%, right? Which is, I would say, pretty average and maybe even good for a lot of these brands on a one-time purchase customer. This is the big problem that so many brands are trying to fix, is their one-time purchase problem. These new customers are largely unprofitable on the first purchase. And the whole mechanism of subscriptions is specifically designed to fix this problem, right? Is to shorten the time frame with which people repurchase. So if the natural repurchase cadence for a one-time buyer is, it's, let's say 60% within 6 months. So it's a 10% repurchase rate month over month. The average subscription that you get, let's just say you take the total, you're like that Chad hyperscaler, like everything you can to process the second order. You don't send billing reminders, you get everybody in on subscription, blah, blah, blah. You might be at like an 80% repurchase rate within the second month. So that's a big delta, right? 80% subscription, 10% for one-time purchase. You've got a lot of room to play with. And the thing about subscriptions, when you think about it like that, is like, oh, wow. Okay. So if the alternative is getting people in as a one-time customer, the happy medium to me seems to be, no, let's go for the opt-in. Like, let's get people in on subscription. Let's make it really good. The people that fit, let's get it to like 60%, 65, whatever. And we can accept not a very good order 2 retention rate if that means improving our order 3 retention rate as high as we can, And so it's like, we have brands where we're like, your order 2 retention rate is 80% right now, or it's 78%, but you're doing it because of this. We think you should be at 65. Like we're happy if you're at 65%, and 35% of people say it's not for me, and you can extend your average rebill cadence even a little bit. If that means we can get your order 3 retention to where it needs to be, and then and get more people past that accumulation hump, get them customizing, get them updating, and you model out the downstream impact that it has, and it's massive.
Yeah.
And I think if you think about it, not like, oh my gosh, like most people have artificially inflated retention numbers if they're taking that order 2 at all costs.
Well, that's where like, that's kind of where I was going with it, like the bleak kind of like versus not. But I guess in that scenario, you're kind of like framing it through the lens of like the people. And I guess I just haven't experienced this so much with my clients of like people who don't send rebill reminders and things like that. Like if you're not sending a rebill reminder, you're probably trying to take it. You're being shady. You're trying to take advantage of something, of a disconnect, right? That means even if the product isn't fulfilling the needs, you're being a little shady by not sending that rebill reminder. You should send the rebill reminder. And so I actually think that's a truer delta, right? Like whatever that ends up being, because the reality is what you're describing as like the 60% after 6 months, is it's okay because people try this product, whether you're a subscriber or one-time purchase, and it either doesn't taste good, it doesn't work for them, they don't like it, whatever the reason, that's okay. That's just normal. Like, we're always trying new products, right? And we don't like the food we buy at the supermarket, or we don't like the supplement we try from X, Y, or Z brand, whatever it is. And that's okay. And so it's like, that's what I guess where I was trying to go with this is like the repeat purchase rate by 6 months, 60% is not bad, because 40% of people probably would have turned out in that first month anyways, because it wasn't the right fit for them, right? So it's like kind of the same thing, just looked at it differently. I don't think it's as extreme as what you're saying, because the reality is, like, if you're not being egregious to just try to get that second to order, which I completely agree with you, you should be willing to come down with that. There shouldn't be that high of a delta over 6 months. You know what I mean?
There is.
No, I Bryan
Armageddon.
Bryan and I know some of the same brands, so I know I probably can. If we weren't recording, we could probably talk a little bit more. But it is like some of these companies that get to 30, 40, 50 million in run rate like really fast. It's because they're amazing at getting people to spend money with them, but they're not. And then they do build out retention to empower like second purchases and convert one-time purchases and stuff like that. But it's not like where they put a ton of focus on. So I do think for a lot of brands there is a huge delta. Now, maybe not everybody's like that. Not everybody has that opportunity. Like, the reality is the average brand is going to be a lot less than that. They're still doing a good job. But Bryan, you talked about this once, and I can't remember exactly where it was, but this idea that a one-time purchaser who then subscribes is worth like 2x what a normal, like an immediate opt-in subscriber. So I'm not even talking about somebody who hasn't subscribed.
Right.
And so, but this idea is like, we can't create an experience that caters to just that audience, because Andre's made all these points about how you have to bring a lot of more people in the bucket. But it does make me feel like a little bit of like, having heard you talk about that before and what we're talking about with like the new year, it's like, maybe the opportunity here is I've spent so much time trying to build up this first order subscription opt-in rate that I'm going to kind of like leave it a little bit. And I'm going to start looking at all these people and interviewing and getting more qualitative data on people that are trying it and what they like, because if I can get them to subscribe, I get a lot more profit down the road.
Right. You would get, all things considered, you would get far better, annualized returns from keeping your subscription opt-in rate the same, but indexing towards better fit customers than in going from, let's just say 50% opt-in rate on subscriptions, better fit customers, focused on that, better retention. You get far better annualized returns doing that than going from 50 to 80% opt-in rates.
Right. Yep.
And you're right. Like, I think that there's a threshold where it's like, it's good enough, the people, like, our subscription offer is compelling, but there's other ways, there's other schools of thought too. Like, people do really well with the subscription only funnels and stuff, but it comes, it's certainly a trade-off. And what I will say, I kind of want to go back though really quickly to your original question, Matt, which is basically like, what does it actually make sense to focus on? And we took it for granted that the people that have a low opt-in rate haven't focused basically what I see is actually like, okay, where do you actually spend your time and resources? I'm sure you probably have seen this too, that I actually think that the hyperscalers have their priorities much more in order than the people that are, slow growth and spinning their wheels on retention. Like, we have had brands, and I know you guys all know this, is like, we've talked a lot about the pitfalls of going too far down that path. But the counterpoint is, like, we have all worked with brands that are like obsessing over their churn numbers and obsessing over retention and obsessing over email flows and obsessing over everything. And it's like, dude, you're getting 10% of your customers in on subscription right away.
Yeah.
Or like, you could spend a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Like, and so really, really, like, if you want to grow a business quickly, you are going to plow most of that into acquisition.
You're totally right. And my whole shtick has always been the joke I like saying on Twitter is, which is more important, acquisition or retention? And I'm a subscription guy, so everybody thinks it's retention. It's not. It's acquisition. Like if you can figure out how to acquire the right customer with the right offer to get them on a subscription, retention in many instances, 90% is solved. It's a little bit of enablement after the fact, right? Like the right kind of bulk offer that's not 6 months supply on a 1 month cadence, right? You get somebody to buy 3 months supply on a 3 months cadence. Boom. You've solved your month 2, month 3 problem, right? Now you have a month 4 problem. So I 100% agree with what you're saying, Bryan, is that, and yeah, we have maybe been nitpicking at people a little bit about growth and stuff. So I hope everybody listening, if you're not growth, you will realize the reason they're good at what they do is they're obsessing over how they're acquiring people. You need to be more obsessive on how you acquire subscribers. And if you've never really been down that road, don't worry about going too far. We'll be here to pull you back. Andre, as we're getting a little bit close to time, so I want to see if there's anything else you want to share with stuff to focus on in 2026. And I do want to spend just a couple minutes with my bonus question that I told you guys about before we start recording.
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of all the feels that I've had through this year. I think there's the takeaway message though is exactly I'm exactly with you guys. The brands that can worry about retention, they're the ones that are focusing on acquisition. That's basically the formula. If you're not looking at acquisition at all and you have 10, 15% opt-in rates, you don't really have a churn problem yet. It's when you start to, and you can still have, quite frankly, you can still have larger brands who use this as basically, they have subscriptions as an option on the PDP. They get 10% rates. It could be a $10, $50 million overall MRR machine, and it does fuel a lot of retention. And at the end of the day, it's that machine that fuels the bank account, and the numbers go up, and those are the numbers they get to actually spend on acquisition. Right. But realizing and shifting that focus of understanding that not all customers are built the same. Some customers are very, very highly valuable. Some are going to fall into that silver bucket, and there's going to be a ton, the majority actually, that will be in that bronze bucket. And knowing how to focus both the product and the service and new product development, customer service, CRM, retention on that gold tier customer base is going to pay off so much more. One simple example of, again, thinking of customers less myopically and more like in those customer cohorts, a ton of pet food companies this year. So top of mind idea. We had one brand had a ton of churn on first order because the dog didn't like the treats and couldn't eat them. So the product team was like, oh, we need some kind of a flavor topper for this thing. And I basically told them, hey guys, these are low fit customers to begin with. You will not convince somebody to slightly trick their dog and turn it into a 20 order customer, right? This is a cost center for you. So focus on ask the really, really happy customers, hey, is there anything we can do to improve the current one? Or is there a new product you'd like to buy from us that we can develop? And guess what? They are at least 3 to 5 times more likely to convert on those products, if not more. And this is what we're starting to see as with cross-sell and upsell offers. So upsell is we're targeting now upsell offers to be a little more mid-tier focused. So customers on order 2, 3, 4, it's, hey, bulk up, prepay for 3 months and change your cadence to a 3-month frequency. And then, customers in orders 5, 6, 7, 10, it's, hey, here's a bunch of subscriber exclusive discounts to try the other SKUs in our portfolio. And we're seeing a much higher engagement rate and conversion rates on those upsells rather than just trying to say, hey, subscribers, we just try to penetrate the product SKU a lot more just for subscribers in general. So I would say, think about not all the customers are made the same.
Andre, you're already a fast talker. I should not have told you that time was almost up, but I think it's amazing everything you just condensed in like 3 minutes.
Oh, it's awesome.
just teasing you a little bit. Just teasing you a little bit. That was gold. You did make me think of just survivor bias, which is we're often worrying about the wrong things, right? Like, so yes, like it's easy to obsess over what the people that hate our stuff are saying. We should be listening to the people that love our stuff and make sure that we're putting them first. And then maybe there's stuff we can fix or change, kind of thing. So I do really, really like that though. All right. Bonus question time. So I have thought about this for the last I don't know, maybe 2 years. And, maybe if I ever have more free time in my life, we'll end up doing it. Or maybe the three of you can help me pull it off. Yeah. Bryan's laughing because he knows we're in similar boats. Babies, businesses, all these things. I really want to do because there's already like Sub Summit that already does a subscription conference, but it has a lot of different subscription related industries in it. And I really want to do like a D2C physical goods subscription, like maybe conference is too big of a word. Think of it like, just 30 brands and like, or something like some kind of like mastermind, roundtables, things like that. So I had this idea of it because I'm in Utah, and my idea for a name would be like hold it in Park City, do it during the ski season, do it at a ski resort. And since we're up in the mountains, it's like a summit. So it'll be like a subscription summit. And then I realized that's where Sub Summit comes from. So that's the name that I had for about 2 seconds and thought I was super clever on. But my question for you guys is this: what would be a great format? Because I think that brands would love this, is if we could come up with a format where we get the CEOs and founders of all the subscription app companies in the same room, talking strategy, talking best practices, arguing is fine in a way that's, because I think the audience would love that, but it might not be the best way for them to sell their services. What are some ideas of like, how do we get, and maybe there's no bad ideas where we're doing some kind of grudge match with like people with fake boxing gloves and stuff, but what are some formats you think that would be really cool to have at a conference like that, where it's, again, physical good stuff? What are some things you think in there?
I mean, one thing that just jumps out at me, I have always been on the brand side for 10 years, right? I was always kind of getting invited to these events. And the ones that jumped out at me as the ones that like I enjoyed the most and I would go back to again and again are the really intimate retreats. Like essentially the ones that it was like 100 people and there were very few vendors. There were maybe like, a 10-to-1 ratio of brand to vendor. And it was less about like preaching and like these like really, big shows and panels and things like that. And more about just like letting people talk to each other, like giving them as many opportunities to network with each other and actually have conversations. And then when there were people that got up on stage, or there wasn't even a stage, it was more like when they got up to speak, they would actually share a lot more. Like some of my bigger clients, they're like, I go to these conferences and they don't share any information, and I don't share any information because like everybody's there recording it, right? But if it's intimate and you're not allowed to record and this is all like private conversation, people are actually going to start like sharing real stuff, right? And like, I think that's where it gets really interesting of hearing like actually what's working and real data.
Lock everyone's phones up.
Yeah.
Get everybody. Yeah. And then you might be able to
and then
get everybody.
Getting actual leaders, like not their teams, like getting the people who are running these businesses.
I like that.
That's cool.
Like
Brian, do you have thoughts? I feel like you have some thoughts, Brian.
I just think that there's like a real lack of like practical content and education around subscriptions. It's the kind of stuff that I wish I had more time to be putting out, personally, like, and that's like a huge goal of mine for this new year is to actually like get some more stuff out there. But like really, I would actually like knowing the CEOs of most of these subscription brands, and there's like VPs at, like Eric Andrews over at Order Groove puts out some of the best subscription content on YouTube. Yeah. He's like their VP of growth. Like there's all of these subscription apps have like really smart people that actually know subscriptions. And I think it'd be kind of cool to see them put on like a little roundtable tactical workshop. Maybe like one of them's in charge of like, you're going to talk about this. You're going to talk about this. You're going to talk about this. And maybe, one of us joins them for that. And then we get like a brand side that one of their clients that does something really cool in this area. And it's kind of like
everybody could have their own. You could do like a list of topics and say, you can pick which topic you want, or you could pick this or this. Here's the format and the structure. That could work. I really like it.
And it's kind of like you have like 1 hour roundtables or whatever, or it's like whatever, and you just kind of cycle through, and it's like we're going to talk about. Maybe there's like here's the fundamental here's like the fundamentals of subscription growth, of like growing a subscription brand. Here's what vision of perfection kind of looks like. And then within each of those buckets, it's like acquisition, retention, expansion, analytics, customer experience, customer support. Like, how do you handle each one of those different things and break it down? I think that could be really cool.
I like that.
I think to me, I try to think about like same as Jordan, trying to think about an event that I would like to and type of things I'd like to hear myself. To me, to echo on Bryan's point, yes, actionable pieces, but I would love for brands to be able to, for subscription heads, but it's more down to the brands that really nailed one part of that subscription experience, for example, and just sitting down and really diving deep into, okay, how did you get to like this sort of a retention funnel? And what were the design decisions like? What trade-offs did you decide to make? Because I think the brands or the subscription app companies, they have a great insight into a cohort of brands, right? They can see meta trends into what works, what doesn't, what type of features get utilized. But I think those kind of patterns are one thing. To hear somebody who put it into practice and kind of cast that spell with their own words type deal and why it worked, I think hearing it from the horse's mouth is really like the most interesting part. Because to me, same thing with business podcasts, getting to hear it from the horse's mouth, from the brand who put it into practice, and what was that decision thought process like, or more so even what did it feel like to go through that transition from change from status X to status Y, is really, really interesting. Because I think that's what brands would want to hear too, just because brands identify with other brands the most, and they're just like, hey, I'm just a retention person at a team. I would love to, I want to hear what another retention person at a team had to go through, and here's how it worked out for them. So it's a lot easier to, it seems like, to identify, but it's that message just like sinks in deeper on a deeper level. And because it's not necessarily even the how you do something, it's why you want to focus on what you're doing. And exactly. I think that's it. So the roundabout way of saying it's like, I actually want to hear brands speak rather than see.
No, that's a great idea, because I'm thinking like maybe the price of entry is you actually have to fill out like a story of what you did or whatever, and that you may be called on to share that, or you might get put up on a panel or in a roundtable and you have to talk about that kind of thing. Like, okay, you guys have given me, that's been my biggest roadblock, was trying to figure out some of those format. You guys actually have been give me some great stuff. You will be seeing a group chat follow-up. Bryan, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, I think that the sub apps would like to do this. I kind of want to see, like, I think that this is a good example for the, the leadership of the sub apps to be like, who's got that game, like who's got that dog in them a little bit. The
thing is, they're all so good. Like if I think about,
who can actually like add value to a group of brands, or at that level. And like, it's not like you have to be a great subscription strategist to like be a good CEO or a good leader of these sub apps.
Yeah.
But like, I know that they're all like trying to get more FaceTime with brands and stuff. And this is like a good way to do it.
Well, and that's the thing, is I do feel like it's a little bit of like a FOMO of like, okay, 3 of your top 10 customers are going to be at this. Do you want to be at it, or do you want to not be at it? So there's an element of how we could market and stuff too. But I will be sending you guys a message about maybe some ideas about how we could kind of put some of this on in the near future. But okay, I'm going to wrap up. Guys, thanks again from the bottom of my heart. I love all of you. I love working with you and hearing from you and having you come on here. I do think we did this twice this year. I think next year, maybe we might have to start doing it quarterly or something like that, because actually this is pretty fun. And so I will, for everybody listening, I will have links to everybody's website and LinkedIn in the show notes. But I want to give a big shout out to Bryan Starck, Jordan Narduchi, Andre Rudnik, 3 great guys that know subscriptions. Highly recommend following them. And Bryan, I do hope you make more content, because you were killing it with content for a while there. But I know things have gone quiet because of all the other pressures and stress. So, all right. Thanks guys for coming on.
Thanks for having us, Matt.
Thanks for hosting, Matt. This was awesome.
You're the man.
Awesome. All right. That's it for another episode of Subscription Prescription. Stay tuned next Tuesday for another dose. That's it for today. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe so that you can get notified when new episodes come out each week on Tuesdays.